Ringo Starr just turned 85, but his birthday celebration left fans worried. The Beatles drummer broke down crying during his annual Peace and Love moment. He had to cancel shows in Philadelphia and New York after getting sick. Doctors told him to rest, but something deeper seemed wrong. For the first time ever, he publicly mourned John and George during his birthday speech. His voice cracked as he spoke. What's really happening to the last surviving Beatle has everyone concerned. Richard Starkey was born on July 7, 1940, at 9 Madryn Street in Liverpool. That summer, German bombs were falling on the city almost every night. His parents tried to stay calm, but everything around them was shaken. His father, a baker named Richard Starkey Sr., was already starting to drift away. When little Richard was only 3, his father left and never came back. His mother, Elsie, suddenly had to raise him alone. She worked all day as a cleaner and spent her nights as a barmaid just to afford rent and food. In 1944, they were forced to move to a cheaper place because they couldn't keep up with the costs anymore. Then came something even worse. When Richard was 6 years old, his appendix burst. At first, it seemed like just another surgery, but something went very wrong. He caught a life-threatening infection called peritonitis and fell into a coma for days. No one was sure if he would make it. He stayed in the hospital for almost a whole year, far from his mother. When he finally got out in May 1948, he was 8 years old and couldn't even read or count properly. But he didn't complain, he just kept going. At 13, after he had started getting tutoring to catch up in school, disaster hit again. In 1953, a tuberculosis outbreak swept through his school, and Richard got sick. He was sent to a special hospital where he had to stay for 2 years. It was lonely, no friends, no school, just silence. But one day, a nurse gave him a cotton bobbin mallet and told him to hit it against a metal cabinet just for fun. That sound lit something up inside him. A health worker gave him a record called Bedtime for Drums, and he couldn't stop listening. That was the first time he felt like he had something of his own. He grew up in the Dingle neighborhood, one of the hardest parts of Liverpool. It was full of gang fights and danger. Richard ended up joining one just to survive. He saw beatings almost every week, and one day he was attacked so badly by a rival group that it changed the way he saw himself forever. He was already small and quiet, but after that, he felt even more unsure of his place in the world. Music became his escape. It made him feel like he had a reason to keep going. In 1956, when he was 16, he got a job as an apprentice machinist at a factory. There he met Roy Trafford, who loved skiffle music, a style that mixed jazz, folk, and blues. They practiced in the factory basement with another worker named Eddie Miles and formed a band. In 1957, Richard's stepfather bought him a used drum kit for Christmas. 2 months later, he joined the Eddie Clayton's group and played his first real show at the Cavern Club on July 31, 1957. Worked all day at the factory and played music at night. It was the only thing that gave him real joy. In November 1959, he was asked to join another group, the Hurricanes. They needed a real drum kit, and he had one. They changed their name to Rory Storm and the Hurricanes just before he joined. That's when he started calling himself Ringo Starr. He wore a lot of rings, and Starr made him sound like someone meant to be seen. During his solo moments, they called it Star Time, and he sang songs like Boys by the By 1960, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes were bigger in Liverpool than even the Beatles. Then came Hamburg. In October 1960, they were booked to play in Germany's red light district. The city was wild. George Harrison called it the naughtiest city in the world, and Paul McCartney said every woman there was either a stripper or a prostitute. They played all night, took drugs, drank nonstop, and barely slept. It was chaos. On November 29, 1960, Paul and drummer Pete Best were arrested for setting fire to a condom they used for light in their dark room. They were deported on December 1st. Ringo was surrounded by madness, but somehow he survived. During this time, Ringo recorded with John, Paul, and George for the first time when Pete Best couldn't make it. It was October 15, 1960, and they backed Lou Walters on a song called Summertime. That was years before the world knew about the Beatles. Later in 1961, they recorded Cry for a Shadow with Tony Sheridan, while Ringo and his band struggled to get by. They had no steady money. Ringo even thought about moving to America just to find better chances. But something was pulling him toward those 3 boys from Liverpool. In early 1962, Pete Best kept missing shows. On February 5, 1962, Ringo filled in again, and George Harrison remembered thinking, this is it. They wanted Ringo full-time, but he was still under contract with the Hurricanes. That one performance didn't seem important to Ringo, but it was the beginning of something huge. On August 16, 1962, Pete Best was suddenly fired. On August 18th, Ringo officially became a Beatle. But the moment wasn't joyful. Fans were furious. On August 19th at the Cavern Club, half the crowd was chanting, Pete forever. Ringo never. George Harrison was headbutted in a hallway and showed up with a black eye. People threw things at the stage. Ringo got death threats. For weeks, he was heckled on the streets. He started wondering if this was even worth it. Then came the recording sessions. On September 4, 1962, he played at Abbey Road for producer George Martin, who wasn't impressed. Just a week later, on September 11th, Martin brought in another drummer, Andy White, and had Ringo play tambourine instead. Ringo was humiliated. He thought, "They're doing to me what they did to Pete." He thought he was finished. During the 1963 tours, the other Beatles tested him with pranks. They hid his drums, lied about showtimes, and created fake emergencies just to see if he could handle the stress. At one show in Wales, the entire band had to use someone else's instruments because their gear had mysteriously vanished. It was rough, but Ringo stayed calm. Slowly, he earned their trust. He played drums in a strange way because he was left-handed but used a right-handed kit. That awkward setup made his rhythm sound unique, but he always worried it made him look like a bad drummer. He practiced constantly, scared of being replaced. He even lost sleep over it. But that style became part of the Beatles' sound. It made songs like Love Me Do and Please Please Me feel different from anything else. On June 3, 1964, just before their world tour, Ringo collapsed during a photo shoot. His fever hit 102, and doctors diagnosed tonsillitis. The band had to decide whether to cancel their biggest American shows or replace him. They brought in a drummer named Jimmy Nicol. Ringo missed 8 shows in Denmark, Holland, and Australia. George Harrison was so upset he threatened to leave the tour. Ringo didn't want surgery, so he flew to Australia while still sick and rejoined the band on June 15 in Melbourne. One illness nearly ended everything they had built. When the Beatles landed at JFK on February 7, 1964, they had no idea what was waiting. 4,000 fans were already screaming before the doors opened. Ringo stepped out, smiling, not realizing he was about to become a magnet for hysteria. His goofy charm made him an instant favorite, but the adoration quickly turned dangerous. Just 4 months later, on June 13, in San Francisco, a crowd of 500 schoolgirls went wild just to see him during a short airport layover. 5 of them collapsed from hysteria. One of them, 18-year-old Helena Rand, was the head of California's Beatles fan club. She managed to give Ringo a surfer shirt before fainting in his arms. Police had to form human shields to stop him from being crushed on the spot. 20 officers barely held the crowd back. Through it all, Ringo kept smiling. He even said, "I enjoy it." But that was just the beginning of what Beatlemania would do to him. While filming A Hard Day's Night in 1964, Ringo's natural wit made him a star on screen. He stole entire scenes without even trying. But behind the charm was exhaustion. On June 3, just a day before their world tour, Ringo collapsed again during a photo shoot. He had a high fever and was rushed to the hospital with acute tonsillitis. The doctor said he needed rest, but the tour couldn't wait. Jimmy Nicol was paid $2,500 per show to replace him. Ringo thought he was being permanently pushed out. Lying in a hospital bed, he watched someone else sit behind his drums. He returned a week later, but the fear never fully left him. He later explained that the illness was more serious than anyone realized, and for the first time, he admitted that age was finally catching up with him. During his annual Peace and Love birthday celebration in Los Angeles, Ringo broke down in tears while speaking to fans. He mentioned John and George, saying he missed them every single day, and that being the last surviving Beatle sometimes felt like a heavy burden rather than a blessing. His voice cracked as he said, "I still send them love every night before I sleep." That moment made headlines across the world. For decades, Ringo had been the cheerful one, the joker, the optimist. But now, at 84, fans saw a fragile side of him they'd never seen before. Fans saw a fragile side of him they'd never seen before. In interviews following his recovery, Ringo confessed that touring had become harder. "I love playing," he said, "but I can't keep pushing my body like I used to." Friends close to him revealed that he'd been quietly talking about retirement for the past 2 years, especially after the death of several old friends and fellow musicians. Yet, Ringo's love for music still burned brightly. He continued writing songs at home, saying it helped him stay connected to the spirit of his youth. "Every time I play, I still feel like that kid hitting a metal cabinet in the hospital," he once said. "It reminds me, I survived." Even as fans worry about his health, Ringo continues to show up for them with gratitude and warmth. He often says that his message of peace and love is the most important thing he'll ever leave behind. "That's what the world needs," he said softly during a recent BBC interview. "And if I can keep spreading that, then I've done my part." Whether he decides to step away from touring or not, one thing is certain: Richard Starkitha, boy who almost didn't survive childhood, who became Ringo Starr of the Beatles, will forever be remembered, not just for his rhythm, but for his resilience. He later explained that the illness was more serious than anyone realized, and for the first time, he admitted that age was finally catching up with him. During his annual Peace and Love birthday celebration in Los Angeles, Ringo broke down in tears while speaking to fans. He mentioned John and George, saying he missed them every single day, and that being the last surviving Beatle sometimes felt like a heavy burden rather than a blessing. His voice cracked as he said, "I still send them love every night before I sleep." That moment made headlines across the world. For decades, Ringo had been the cheerful one, the joker, the optimist. But now, at 84, fans saw a fragile side of him they'd never seen before. In interviews following his recovery, Ringo confessed that touring had become harder. "I love playing," he said, "but I can't keep pushing my body like I used to." Friends close to him revealed that he'd been quietly talking about retirement for the past 2 years, especially after the death of several old friends and fellow musicians. Yet, Ringo's love for music still burned brightly. He continued writing songs at home, saying it helped him stay connected to the spirit of his youth. "Every time I play, I still feel like that kid hitting a metal cabinet in the hospital," he once said. "It reminds me, I survived." Even as fans worry about his health, Ringo continues to show up for them with gratitude and warmth. He often says that his message of peace and love is the most important thing he'll ever leave behind. "That's what the world needs," he said softly during a recent BBC interview. "And if I can keep spreading that, then I've done my part." Whether he decides to step away from touring or not, one thing is certain: Richard Starkitha, boy who almost didn't survive childhood, who became Ringo Starr of the Beatles, will forever be remembered, not just for his rhythm, but for his resilience. In the months after his illness, Ringo spent more time at home in Los Angeles with Barbara, reflecting on his life and legacy. He began turning down interviews and public appearances, preferring quiet mornings in his garden over flashing cameras. Friends say he's been more introspective than ever, revisiting old letters, photos, and even unreleased music from his Beatles days. He's also been open about the emotional toll of losing so many people he loved. John in 1980, George in 2001, and even lifelong friends like Joe Walsh's bandmates and other rock legends from his generation. "When you get to my age," he said in one interview, "you spend more time remembering than planning." Despite the sadness, Ringo still finds light in small things: the laughter of his grandkids, the rhythm of rain on his window, or a surprise call from Paul. The two have remained close, often sending each other little voice notes or sharing jokes about their old days on tours. "It's like we're brothers again," Paul once said. "After everything, we still check in on each other. There's real love there." In late 2024, when fans worried that he might retire, Ringo surprised everyone by releasing a short EP recorded from his home studio. He said it wasn't about fame or sales anymore, it was about joy. "Music is medicine," he said. "It's kept me alive all these years. I play because I still feel love for it." The songs were raw and reflective, filled with nostalgia and quiet acceptance. One track, "End of the Road," made fans emotional. It sounded like a goodbye letter, not to the world, but to his younger self. That as Ringo approaches 85, he's learned to balance gratitude with grief. He often says he doesn't fear death, only forgetting to live while he's still here. Every July 7th, he still holds his peace and love moment, whether on stage or from his backyard. Fans around the world join him at the exact same time, raising 2 fingers and sending a wave of love into the sky. And when Ringo smiles and says, "Peace and love always," people feel it, because after everything he's endured, war, sickness, fame, heartbreak, and loss, he still means it. Now, as Ringo Starr moves deeper into his twilight years, his outlook on life has softened even more. He's no longer chasing success or the next big performance. Instead, he's cherishing simplicity. Each morning starts with meditation, followed by a quiet walk with Barbara along their garden path. Neighbors often spot him waving, wearing his signature peace sign necklace and a smile that's as humble as ever. "I'm still here," he once joked, and that's a miracle in itself. He's talked openly about mortality in recent interviews, not with fear, but with peace. "I've had my run," he said. "I've seen the world, made music that will outlive me, and I've loved deeply. What more could I ask for?" Friends say he's begun organizing his archives, ensuring every letter, photograph, and song demo is properly preserved. He wants the truth of his story told, not just the Beatles part, but the boy who never gave up, said one longtime collaborator. Fans who have seen him in recent months describe a quieter, more reflective version of Ringo. He still cracks jokes, still signs autographs when asked, but his energy has shifted. There's a calmness almost spiritual. Peace and love isn't just his catchphrase anymore. It's become his daily mantra. Even during health scares, he's refused to let fear take over. "Whatever happens, happens," he once said softly. "I'll go out the same way I came in, smiling." In a rare moment during a BBC radio conversation earlier this year, Ringo summed up his life in one sentence: "I was just a poor kid from Liverpool who got lucky, and I never stopped saying thank you." It's that gratitude that continues to define him. While many see him as the last Beatle, Ringo doesn't carry that title with pride. He carries it with humility. "I'm not the last Beatle," he said once. "I'm just Ringo. The rest are still here, just in a different way." And perhaps that's what makes his story so powerful. After everything, the illnesses, the fame, the chaos, the heartbreak, Ringo Starr remains exactly what he's always been: the heartbeat, the steady rhythm behind a generation, still echoing softly, long after the music fades.